Welcome to the Crew Reviews. Our guest today is author Adam Hamdy. If you're not familiar with his name, you soon will be, as Adam is releasing a book in 2020 with James Patterson titled Private Moscow. Adam started in the corporate world, but soon moved into screenplays and novels. His Pendulum series has received rave reviews, and Adam is just getting started. Besides the book with James Patterson, Adam is also releasing Black 13, an espionage novel on par with Ludlum and Cussler. If writing wasn't enough, Adam also co-founded Capital Crime, a new conference held in London in the fall of 2019. It's an honor for the crew to welcome Adam Hamdy to our show today. Well, Adam, thanks for joining us on the Crew Reviews today, and we're going to jump right into some questions. Before we want to say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoy your time today.
Yeah. Good luck.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's jump into some questions. So you have a law degree. You did corporate jobs. You were entrepreneur, screenwriter, novelist, and now you happen to be a co-founder of Capital Crime, one of the newest conferences that just started this past fall in London. So can you kind of tell us a little bit about your progression from law school to all of a sudden you're a conference host? How did you get there?
Where'd you go wrong?
A pinball machine and the little ball bouncing off of loads of buzzers. That's kind of my life. No, in all seriousness, I always wanted to be a lawyer. I came from quite a humble background, and I always wanted to be a lawyer because I watched LA Law and they make loads of money and they had a good lifestyle.
Yeah, and they're pretty.
Yeah, I was a TV kid. You know, I grew up thinking, yeah, lawyer, that looks really cool. And I went and did the law degree and realized that I would hate being a practicing lawyer. So I came away from that, did a couple of jobs out of college, out of university, and then fell into management consulting, which is where you basically go around the world advising companies how to make more money. And I specialized in sales and marketing consulting and worked in Europe and the US and the UK. And I was pretty good at it, but I didn't enjoy it because you never got anything to show for for all of your efforts.
Right.
And I decided shortly after my dad passed away quite suddenly to follow my passion, which had always been writing. And I'd always written in my spare time as a hobby. And I thought, right, life's too short. I'm going to give it a go. And I had 2 years of savings. And it took 8 years before I actually made any money.
That's the math.
So do the math.
I got a finance degree. I got a problem here.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
It was a big problem. I remember one winter we ran out of oil fuel. We were living in quite a remote part of England, and we ran out of fuel oil, and we ended up burning some old furniture in the wood stove.
Wow, jeez.
Yeah, so it was a hard few years, but I was determined and really sort of passionate, and kind of I had that belief at one level that I could do, I had what it took to be a really good writer, and I just held on to that in those hard times, and then around the same time, my screenwriting career and my career as an author took off, and I sold a book called Pendulum in 2015, and at the same time was commissioned to adapt a Booker nominated novel called Number 9 Dream. And those two things were the real turning point for me. And since then, I've been hired to adapt a number of books for screen, sold some of my original projects for screen, and then sold more books. I'm now up to my fourth book comes out in January here in the UK, and that's a book called Black 13. My third book has just come out in the US, and that's Aftershock. I've got a book that I've written with James Patterson that comes out next year, Private Moscow. And, so that turned things around for me, really. And so I thought, well, I'd really like to give something back to the community. And we didn't have a big crime and thriller writing festival in the UK. And so I was talking to my co-founder, David Headley, while we were at Thrillerfest, which is where I know you guys from.
Right.
And we just said, this is fantastic. Why don't we try and do something that's similar in London and aim it at readers? And so that's how Capital Crime came about. So in a nutshell, that's my journey from lawyer to festival co-founder.
Simply amazing. I mean, so you mentioned as you were speaking, you mentioned the name of one of the most iconic thriller writers, I think, alive, James Patterson. And so you're writing a book with him, and that, sir, is no small feat. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
But how does one get to write with Mr. Patterson? Did you have to try out? I mean, is there some kind of selection process? How did that come about?
You hang around his house.
Stalker.
Pretend you're waiting for a bus. You hang around his house and you just throw pages at him every day as he drives out of his through his gate. Just throw pages at him.
I tried that with Lee Child in New York, and I got arrested, so it didn't work for me.
Yeah, well, I think you have to just keep being diligent and persuasive, and if you try and look a little bit dangerous, then they're less likely to turn you down. So give it the old mad eye. Yeah, I mean, if you've ever seen Bowfinger, you'll know that going to people's houses and taking in scripts and pages is the way to have a film or a book successfully published or made.
Right, I know.
Completely.
I mean,
Eddie Murphy just called. He'd like to thank you for pimping Bowfinger, because now that's up to 14 viewers. So
thank you. You've been helpful.
you see, if you've ever worked in a film or produced a low-budget indie film, which I have done, you'll know that Bowfinger is probably one of the most accurate portrayals of the film industry out there. I have lived Bowfinger. But in answering your question, James Patterson read Pendulum and was really kind enough to give it a fantastic review and quote. And then
he says one of the best thrillers of the year.
Yeah,
it says it on the book.
Yeah, that's true.
Awesome.
And then his publisher said, made an approach through my agent. Would you be interested in collaborating with Jim on something? And what do you say? I mean,
I know, right?
Is there an answer other than yes?
There's only one answer to that question. And it's been a fantastic experience. And he is I think he is the best-selling thriller author of all time. And I've learned so much just from the process of working with him and working on the book. It's just been brilliant.
So do you find, I don't know if Capital Crimes helped you formulate any different opinion, but do you find the international public's expectations of crime and thriller books are similar to the US, different? How do they find the storyline and the characters possibly different than what a US reader might expect from the same sort of thing?
I mean, I can talk. I do a lot of work in the US, both with the books, but also with screenwriting, and obviously the UK is my home market, so I know that pretty well. I think with the UK, not to get too metaphorical about it, but I think the UK, we had an empire, and it crumbled. Was taken away from
Sorry
us.
about that. I want
We didn't mean to do that, but
Hey, when did that start, by the way?
we had this empire. We were kind of the colossus of the world, and then we went through this process of losing everything, and we realized that we'd perhaps not done some great things in history. Obviously the Suez Crisis for Britain was a moment of national shame, and for a lot of people, it was the first time that we realized that sometimes we could be the bad guys. And so I think there was there came a point where we liked our heroes to be a bit questionable, shall we say, and to have self-doubt and to not necessarily be heroic all the time. You look at Bond in the Fleming books, you know, he's a womanizer and a drinker and in many ways a depressive, darker character than perhaps he is certainly in the Timothy Dalton and Pierce Brosnan films. And so I think we like our heroes with a bit of a darker edge, and also not to be quite so sure of themselves. Whereas I think, if you look at the American sort of espionage, the American thriller writing, the trend is much more towards someone who's clearly a hero, someone who's clearly heroic. They might have some vulnerabilities and weaknesses, but they don't quite go to the same dark corners, I think, that British thriller fiction goes to. And it means that if you look at the big American US thriller writers, you know, aside from James Patterson and then, you know, prior to that, Tom Clancy, they don't tend to travel quite so well. So some of the big, you know, huge authors in the States don't really sell a lot internationally, and vice versa. You know, if you look at the big sort of crime and thriller authors from the UK, they don't tend to sell quite so well in the US. And I think at its heart, it's because we want different things of our heroes. I also think Americans like to read about American stories because it's you have a continental-sized country.
Yeah.
So much variety within the US. You know, Louisiana is very different from New York.
Right.
So you've got so much variety there that there's enough within your continent to keep your American readers entertained. Whereas the UK is quite a small country, and so we're always sort of outward looking and willing to embrace stories from international locations.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Pendulum trilogy. Obviously, Aftershock, as you mentioned, came out actually last year in Britain, is now coming to the U.S. market. I think you'd probably agree with the assessment that John Wallace is a fairly troubled protagonist. He's got his demons, he's got his issues he's working through, even with Pendulum and all the way through. He really comes across that he needs to atone for his shortcomings or his sins. When you started writing Pendulum, when you started the series, did you have the full story arc worked out? Or did it kind of emerge as each book progressed? Did you know where you were going with
that? The short answer is no, I didn't. And I'd written 2 books before Pendulum. One that I self-published called Battalion, and another one that a small indie publisher in London picked up, which was called Out of Reach. And with Pendulum, in some ways, I'd almost given up hope of securing a big publishing deal. And I got commissioned to adapt Number 9 Dream as I was halfway through Pendulum. And I managed to convince my agent, who was against this idea, of going out with a partial manuscript and not finishing the book. Because I thought, well, if no one's interested, if people are interested, they'll be able to tell from half of the book. And if no one's interested, I'll save myself the aggravation of writing the other half of the book. And it was fascinating because, it was born out of the thought, well, I'm just going to have to keep either self-publishing or, you know, working with indie publishers. And actually, we got our first response within 3 days of submitting the manuscript. And it was from a publisher that we didn't end up selling to. And then within the following week, we had another 2 people interested in buying, and this was on a partial manuscript. So when I went in to meet with my editor, who we ended up selling the book to, she said, "Oh, do you think you've got a trilogy in here?" And I said,
"Of course I do.
Sure.
Of course, yeah.
Yep."
And so
I planned this years ago.
Yeah, I went away and I worked out where the story was going to go. And I think John Wallace and Christy Nash and Patrick Bailey, I think they had enough mileage in them to keep it interesting. And then the with each of the books, I'm trying to tackle a different. What I like to do with my books is, in addition to making them fast paced and entertaining, is to try and have an issue or a theme that each of them tackles that's going to raise questions in people's minds and make them think. So to try and give them a bit of a deeper read, in addition to that, the entertainment factor that we all look for.
Right. Can you also, the thing, and I don't want to, for people that maybe haven't started with Pendulum or haven't read the trilogy, I don't want to give away a huge plot point, but for John, his first scene and when he's first in Pendulum, it's a very dire situation, and that kind of starts really the excitement and the energy of the book. Can you kind of explain to us, or explain to the audience how John changed over the 3 books until you finally get him into Aftershock, as a character?
Yeah, I think when you meet John Wallace, he's deeply unhappy, and that sort of plays into that setup. When you meet him, he is standing on a chair with a noose around his neck. I know I won't say any more than that, but that kind of kicks us into this really high octane thriller. Mm-hmm. And he's somebody who's deeply unhappy, and as you say, he has to atone for some things that he's done in his life that aren't great. And then in the course of the first book, Pendulum, terrible things happen to him. He's put through the ringer. And I think, what happens across the series is that he has a chance to find redemption, and he has a chance, at happiness. And whether he takes it or not is kind of, up to him and for the reader to find out. But that, for me, is his arc. It's somebody coming out of dark times in their lives, and that's the end of the life coaching chapter of this.
How much did that cost us?
For $19.99, if you go to Adam's website, he will continue these sessions on a monthly basis.
Yeah. Eric feels much better now.
Yeah,
but in sticking with that trilogy, Pendulum, it's a fantastic and thoroughly engaging thriller, and a terrific kickoff to the series. Had me guessing right from the beginning, and thus kept me glued to the story. And I found myself turning page after page after page. But I also heard that there's a rumor that it's being developed into a movie.
What?
Care to shed some light on that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Tom Hardy's production company optioned Pendulum shortly after it came out, and we've been working on bringing it to the screen. Originally as we're going to do it as a limited series, but now I'm looking at, I'm talking to potential financiers and stuff about doing it as a series of movies, and there's one in particular who's interested in turning it into a kind of John Wick, highly stylized trilogy of movies, which I could see working quite well, because I think the thing I loved John Wick, the first one, and then I think the second and third one, kind of what they made up for in action, they lacked in sort of storyline. And I think the one thing that the Pendulum trilogy's got going for it is it does have a clear storyline going through all 3 books. So yeah, I think it could be quite exciting.
And would that be a vehicle for Tom Hardy as an actor as well?
That was the idea. Yeah. But it's one of these things when you a star of his caliber, so busy, and nothing is set in the film and TV world until it's actually happening. And even then, I've known, I've got producer friends who've been standing on set ready for the first day of filming, and the money's run. Money didn't show up, and that's it. Pack up.
Wow. Yeah. Your Black 13 series, led by Scott Pierce, kind of dives headfirst into political extremism. So when you were doing the research, did you find fact and fiction sometimes pretty blurry, particularly with, not just Great Britain, but globally?
Yeah, so Black 13 came about because during the Brexit campaign, the EU referendum campaign over here, and then afterwards during the US election campaign, I started to notice certain people being referenced on social media and who I hadn't heard before, but were I hadn't heard of them, but they were being referenced as people who should be revered by the far right. And I try and keep on top of conspiracy theories and extremism left and right. And I'm currently adapting a book called 9 Lives, which is about the MI6 spy inside Al Qaeda. So I try and keep on top of extremists. Bizarrely, it's a little hobby of mine because they are good for material.
Sure.
And I was surprised that I hadn't heard of these individuals. So I started digging, and I then started going to meetings, not for what I would call the extreme far right, but more the feeder groups that suck people into this way of thinking. And I spent over 2.5 years meeting people, talking to law enforcement, people who are either ex-intelligence or current serving members of the intelligence services, and both here and in the US. I interviewed far-right leaders, people who've established notorious groups in the UK. I've spoken to a far-right mass murderer who's serving time in prison, went to see him in prison. I've done a lot of research, and Black 13 is the kind of culmination of all of that. And in addition to being what I hope is a fast-paced and entertaining thriller, the idea is that the book shines a light on what's going on in the world at the moment, and it takes readers on what can be quite an uncomfortable journey of what the radicalization process looks like. And it's not so much, there's no lecturing or preaching or anything in the book. What I wanted to do was give people the experience of being sucked into this way of thinking without realizing it. And so a couple of the early readers that I sent the book to, phoned me or emailed me back and said, I hate you, because I found myself agreeing, halfway, 2/3 of the way into the book, I found myself agreeing with these people, and I didn't really realize what they were until the end. And so I was like, this is brilliant. That's exactly what I wanted, because a lot of the time when you listen to, when you go to these groups, the feeder groups, when you look at the 3-step process they have for red pilling people into the, far right way of thinking, it all sounds really reasonable. And a couple of the meetings that I went to, they were tying themselves to things like abolitionism, the abolition of slavery, right, that movement, the suffragette movement. It's all dressed up in terms of liberty and freedom of speech. And, you don't get into what I would call hate speech until you're much further along the process, and you go to some of the more second and third tier groups that I would never get invited to because I'm mixed race, and so I kind of don't fit the profile of individuals that they're looking for to recruit into what I would call the more serious groups. So yeah, Black 13 it's what I hope is an entertaining thriller, but it's also a journey for the reader to see how far they go before they realize, oh my God, I've been sucked into this way of thinking.
Look, going beyond the actual plot of Black 13, let's talk about your protagonist, Scott Pierce. The buzz and all the accounts we've heard is that he's a action thriller protagonist to be reckoned with and to join some of the greats. And I'm wondering, do you see yourself writing him for a long time? And if so, can you kind of give us a little bit about what his future holds?
Yeah, so Scott Pierce was born actually out of some of the conversations that I was having with members of the intelligence community. And I don't think it's such an issue in the States. But over here, the thing that I kept hearing again and again and again from serving members of the intelligence services or people who've retired was that the portrayal that we have of spies in the UK is not anywhere near the truth. So, James Bond is an orphaned, privately educated, quite well-to-do, wealthy member of the upper middle to upper classes. And that profile pretty much fits with most British espionage fiction. And it's no reflection of what the reality is for the services. It's actually a reflection of the background of the authors who wrote these people. You know, Ian Fleming, an amazing author, but he used to write from his, you know, paradise home in the Caribbean. And actually, when you talk to members of the intelligence community, they are, I mean, one in particular who I can talk about because he's not serving anymore, was a painter and decorator who was in the military, and he was, you know, came from very, very, very humble beginnings and never really left. And he in particular said, you know, James Bond would never succeed in the real world because he would stand out a million miles. What they recruit are people like me who can walk into any bar in the world, any pub, any business, and not stand out. And we are invisible. That's what we're trained to be. And so you don't want people who have distinctive backgrounds and have been to Eton and Oxford and you know, wearing dinner jackets and driving super fast cars. So I made the decision to make Scott Pearce somebody who came from very, very difficult, humble backgrounds. He's mixed race, which from my experience, I've been mistaken for Indian, Israeli, Italian, French. And I've always thought, I should be a spy.
You could be a good spy, yeah.
You know, there are places in the world where I, you know, don't blend in. And
He is.
So,
He is.
my kids are convinced I am one. So he's mixed race. He comes from a very humble background, and he goes into the military because I heard about a school in Wales, which is basically the last resort school for children who are in the care system. And if they've been troubled kids, this is the school that they end up in when no one else will have them. And I thought, what a place to send somebody, because you're either going to come out of that and be really tough and resilient, or you're going to, as most of them in real life, actually end up in prison. You know, you end up getting sucked into the into a life of crime because you lose that structure and order. And I thought, well, send Pearce to, you know, this place and have him build up that resilience. And then because he's smart, he realizes that he needs to go from one institution directly into another. So he signs up for the army straight out of that school, and then does really well and gets recruited into special forces, into the SAS. And then we have a unit which isn't much talked about, but it's an SAS unit that supports intelligence operations. And so there's a path there from, you know, once you're exposed to the intelligence community, being recruited into the intelligence service, which is what happens to him. And then he has an experience on an operation that leads him to believe that there's a conspiracy. And he's like a dog with a bone. He won't let go of it, and he ends up getting discredited and drummed out of the service. So when we meet him at the beginning of Black 13, he's been out of the service for a couple of years, and he's on the trail of this conspiracy, desperate to try and prove, you know, that he was right. And he gets recruited to solve the murder of one of his oldest and closest friends, and that's what sucks him into this world of Black 13. And to answer your question, yes, he's somebody. I've already written the second book in the series, which is called Red Wolf, and that actually takes the action from the UK over to Seattle. And it takes it into a very, very different world.
Starbucks.
There's a conspiracy at Starbucks to drown the world in coffee.
Success.
Yeah. So he is somebody that I hope, if readers respond to, I hope to be writing him for a very long time.
Now, I want to circle back to that. So, because I've heard the story and I think the audience would love to hear it. So you're in New York in 2018, and can you kind of tell us about, you know, most people go to a conference to learn something. You go to a conference and decide to plan and design your own conference. Pretty amazing. Tell us how that started. Kind of give us the skinny on that, if you don't mind.
Well, I mean, I love Thriller Fest. I think we all do.
Yeah.
And ITW is a great organization. And, you go to New York in July, and it was my second or third, no, my third Thriller Fest. And I was there with David Headley, who runs Goldsboro Books in London. And we were just talking about how fantastic Thriller Fest is. And we are, both big supporters of the crime and thriller community in the UK, and try and do as much as possible to help authors, particularly newcomers, to raise awareness and build help build a platform for them.
Mm-hmm.
And we just thought, yeah, this would be great if we can do something similar to this in the UK. What a fantastic institution it will be. We had no idea what was involved. And I know Kimberly Howe, who organizes Thriller Fest, and it never occurred to me to ask her how difficult it was to run a festival.
It never would have happened if you had.
That would be the smart thing to do. But I'm glad I didn't, because if she told me what she told me once we'd started Capital Crime, I probably would have had second thoughts about doing it. It is an incredible undertaking. Yeah. It's really, really time consuming, and you have to make all sorts of really small decisions all the time, and some big ones. And but it paid off. We had a fantastic event, and I'm so glad we did it. And I'll be honest, we took a lot of ideas from Thriller Fest, and I'd always sort of, it was my third year at Thriller Fest. I'd always sort of gone to Thriller Fest and thought to myself, I know, Thriller Fest is a convention for writers. It's primarily aimed at writers who want to further their career, or people who want to learn about the craft of writing. And I'd always thought readers would love something like this, because you have drinks parties, you go and hear your favorite authors talking. I thought, readers would really enjoy the experience. And it turns out that was true. We had a really large number of readers come to Capital Crime, and our feedback after the festival was incredible.
Just expounding on that, then, what did you learn at this first event that you guys put on that maybe you hadn't even anticipated? How much time do we have?
Yeah, huge long list. So I think the big thing we learned was that a festival has like a natural life of its own, and that it doesn't matter how big a guest you have. If you put a guest on a slot that's going to conflict with a meal time,
not going to work.
Audience. So, human beings are, simple creatures. When we need to eat, we need to eat. So, don't put, anybody on that's going to clash with mealtime. So we have a proper lunch break in 2020, and we're not running panels into the evening. And then things like people really appreciate free tea and coffee. So we got amazing feedback on running free tea and coffee stands. And there's just hundreds of little practical things that we've learned from the event. But the main thing is, it sounds silly to say it, but in the same way that Thriller Fest all sort of stems from Kimberly Howe, her attitude is infectious, and that kind of sets the tone for the whole conference. And the same with Capital Crime. It's myself, David Headley, and Lizzie Curl, who's our festival manager. We set the tone for the whole festival, and our tone is kind of irreverent, fun, entertaining, and that seemed to have carried across the whole festival. I think that's the biggest thing. Is it's so important to have the right vibe, the right attitude when you're staging an event like this.
We don't usually have irreverence on the show.
We wish we had that.
This is really novel for us.
I also realized why you called me the other day and said, Eric, would you like to do a panel at 5 o'clock on the next one? I'm like, yeah, 5 o'clock panel sounds great, Adam.
5:30, whatever.
Thanks a lot, Adam. I appreciate it.
4:30 a.m., yeah.
I actually missed the panel I really wanted to go to because I didn't get up in time to eat breakfast at my hotel. So
that was an earlier one, yeah.
That's a fact.
So, Adam, writing full time and then running that successful literary conference, Capital Crime, is like you said, it's time consuming. So how do you manage to balance your family life with the time necessary to write, research, read, and then plan and prepare for that conference? How do you balance it?
This year has been challenging. It's probably the right word. The children on a number of occasions have said to me, "Are you going to be doing capital crime next year?"
They already know.
Yeah. So this year, obviously, I've written Red Wolf, the next in the Black 13 series, co-written Private Moscow with James Patterson, written a pilot, an adaptation of 1 Second After, and done 2 format documents for two TV shows, and done a rewrite on an original series that I've sold to a production company here in the UK. It has been incredibly busy, and so I haven't seen as much of my kids as I wanted to this year, and I'm spending a lot of time in the office, and that's basically how I get to have that kind of output, is just very, very hard work. But I think back to those years when we were burning furniture because we didn't have any money, and I'm just grateful to be able to write full time. I'm lucky. I'm really, really privileged, and there's not many people in the world who get to do what I do, and I will do whatever it takes to meet my deadlines and make sure that the things that I'm involved with are as good as they possibly can be. So if it involves a year of hard work, that's it. I spend as much time as I can with the kids, and they're very understanding. Hopefully next year will be slightly less challenging.
So in that answer, you mentioned, and I didn't know this, or maybe I didn't, I forgot from reading it, that you wrote the screenplay or screen adaptation for 1 Second After?
Yeah, so I've done the pilot episode for 1 Second After, which for people who aren't familiar with it, it's a William Forstchen novel about
It's an awesome book.
Pulse. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. It's basically, it's about an EMP pulse that takes America back to pre-industrial society, and it's set in the town of Black Mountain.
Right.
And yeah, it's just a fantastic story about, do you choose when something like this happens to come together as a community, or do you choose to go full Mad Max Thunderdome and
flies?
Yeah, you get to see both sides of that in that story, and how it plays out.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's really good. Yeah.
Talking about all the things you're involved in, I mean, again, novels of your own, adaptations, co-writes with James Patterson, or Jim, as I'm going to call him from now on, and your own original pilots. You've already kind of accomplished more than most authors dream of accomplishing. What's your Everest? What's ahead for you? And if you had to say where you're going to spend most of your creative energy over the next 10 years, do you know what that is? Or is it just kind of take every opportunity that comes as it is? And
I think it comes back to what I said, which is I'm just really lucky and fortunate to be doing this professionally and doing it full time. My next challenge, I think for 2020, I'd like to get a TV show on the air. I think that's I think without boasting, I think I've reached the stage now where I finally know what I'm doing. And it's bizarre. You can do things for a long time, and suddenly you'll have that light bulb moment where you go, now I understand what this is all about. And I had that light bulb moment for screenwriting probably about 18 months ago. And so now I feel ready to take on the challenge of getting a show on the air. So I think that's my sort of immediate ambition for 2020. And there's a show that's looking very promising here in the UK, which I'm hoping is going to go into production. But long term, I just want to keep doing what I'm doing and hopefully build more of a fan base and just keep entertaining people. And I'm really happy. I'm happy with where I am in life, and I'm happy with what I'm doing professionally. I don't have a burning ambition to scale any particular Everest, if I can just keep going where I'm going and keep progressing along this track, I'll be really satisfied. If I stay where I am, it's a brilliant place to be. If I grow and develop, equally brilliant. So I'm content, which is an unusual thing, I think, in this world.
Well, Adam, I think you know what's coming. We're about to start our favorite time of every interview is the lightning round. So
this is where it really matters.
We're going to take turns throwing some questions at you, and we want conscious thought. We don't want a whole, how am I going to do this? First thing that pops off your mind is,
oh no.
Here it comes.
That's the fun part.
So I'm up first, and I put an immense amount of thought into these questions, at least 4 minutes. So I'm expecting, some quick answers from you. So no. So of course, we're in the United States, you're in Great Britain, and the British are known for their tea. So what is your favorite kind of tea, and does anything get added to your tea?
Oh, so this is Lady Grey is my favorite kind of tea, which is the least thriller writing kind of tea I think anyone so Lady Grey, which is a blend of delicate floral notes and orange. It has a hint of orange in it, and I'll just put a bit of sugar in it. That's it. No milk or anything.
We do Earl Grey here, so Lady Grey.
Lady Grey, yeah. Lady Grey.
And Lady Grey, the official tea of
our second sponsor, thanks to Adam Hamdy.
Thank you.
Not Lady Grey.
Okay, so finish this one for me, Adam. God save the, and the answer can't be Queen.
The Union.
Oh, see, almost a cop out. That's a pretty good answer,
cheating,
though. Yeah.
Okay. Third question: C.S. Lewis or J.R.R. Tolkien?
Tolkien.
Tolkien all day.
Tolkien.
Yeah.
All day.
Yeah.
Good man. Good man.
Oh, I didn't realize these are being judged as well.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. They are.
Oh, we throw full judgment at you.
Oh yeah.
we started judging the moment that the recording light came on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, well, listen, I'll give you a hint then. Here, when we used to have the death penalty, the judge would put on a black cap before pronouncing the sentence.
Wow.
Not a white cap.
He would say to the clerk, bring out the black cap. So you need to put on a black cap if I displease you.
Oh, he's got
okay,
one.
it's already
This
starting.
is for the next question.
Yeah.
Wow, I don't have that one. Yeah, you might need this one for the next question, because the next question is: give us your best and give us your worst British prime ministers.
Best and worst British prime minister. Oh God, what a time to be asking this.
Start at Chamberlain and work your way down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think best British prime minister. I think Churchill, but probably not for the reasons that everybody says. I think he's probably the best prime minister. Not so much for the Second World War, but for the fact that he used to take cabinet meetings from his bed.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say from the bathtub. The bathtub is the answer.
yeah.
I thought you were going to give us actually on that one.
Yeah, he used to take cabinet meetings from his bed. He also used to suffer from depression, which he called the black dog, and his cure for that was alcohol. So
works for us.
He was a self-medicating, bed meeting prime minister who happened to be decisive in winning a war. Worst prime minister, who do you pick? I mean, there's so many bad choices. I think our most recent prime minister, Theresa May, has to rank up there. It doesn't matter what side of the political fence you're on, and it doesn't matter what your view is on Brexit or whatever. She was pretty ineffective.
I was going to say, ineffective, useless.
Yeah.
Spineless.
So my final question, kind of a question here. You need 4 handsome, debonair MCs for Capital Crime 2020. You also need a live podcast. Do you happen to know who could step into this role?
Hold on, let me put my hat on.
This is a difficult one. I'm not even sure that this could. I guess for a lightning round, this is a hard question. No, I mean we would love to have you guys there. And you've gone beyond a podcast. You're doing video. This is like some kind of international transatlantic studio link up with 4 semi-celebrity hosts.
Exactly.
I mean, what we'd be lucky to have you.
I think
Who
what you're
else?
trying to say is multimedia empire or something to that effect.
Yeah.
We're going to hold him to it.
That's right.
Yeah, you're moguls. Yeah, we'd love to have you.
We were going to offer to publish Black 13 here in the United States, but our printers don't print off. They don't print pages that quickly. So
Yeah.
we'll try.
Come
We'll
off
do our
looking like
best.
this.
The ink is expensive.
Yeah.
Love it.
We'll stand on the street corner and sell them for you. Honest to the truth. So, well,
All right,
Chris,
so
you're up.
My turn. All right. So the UK is forced to take back one of the original 13 U.S. colonies. And guess what? You get to choose which one. So which state are you taking back?
Ooh. I'm partial to New York.
You can have it. There you go.
I have to say, I like Manhattan.
You know what New York comes with, by the way, right?
What does it come with? You. Yeah.
Well, no, I'm not in New
No.
York anymore, but there's someone else who has a couple famous towers, Midtown. He frequents there.
He lives in Florida now. Florida's where he lives. Watch it.
Yeah, he's moved to Florida now.
All right.
Florida. Yeah, he's no longer in New York. But I mean, New York, because I love Manhattan, but I also love upstate New York, Garrison.
Right.
And
That's
whole
beautiful.
wilderness, So yeah, I think New York.
Okay. So let's go back to UK. Brexit, yay or nay?
Man, here goes his career.
Are we going to get our second pass?
So 3 years ago, I would have said yay, and now I'd say I'm not sure. I'm not sure there's a lot to be gained, so probably nay. But I don't know. The question's not going to be put to me again. I think we're going to get a conservative government, and I think we're going to come out.
All right. So now let's not get so serious. And I'm going to ask you a joke, and you have to provide the answer.
Oh no!
It's the oldest known British joke, dates back to the 10th century. It was found in a book of Anglo-Saxon poetry, and it goes something like this: "What hangs at a man's thigh and wants to poke the hole that it's often poked before?"
A key.
Damn it!
Yes.
I was going to say, we just turned this into the crew reviews after dark.
After
What the-
dark.
So witty.
I
And
don't
you.
think your board took. This isn't Chaucer.
I really thought. Never mind. So my next one, you've written comic books, which was kind of cool to find out about you. But what is your favorite comic book story or hero?
So my favorite hero would be Batman, and I love The Dark Knight Returns. So Frank Miller and The Dark Knight Returns. I also love The Watchmen. Alan Moore.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, widely misunderstood genius. I think that's a fantastic. So those two would be my favorite: The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen.
So great answers. Very dark.
So not Captain
material.
America.
Not
So weird.
Superman. No, Batman's awesome. And so my final question is: have you seen Frozen 2 yet?
No, I have not seen Frozen 2. One of our nearby cinemas actually was the scene of a machete fight.
So that's the difference between the UK and the United States.
I'm not making this up. A bunch of people took their kids to see Frozen yesterday at a place called Star City, just outside Birmingham, which is about half an hour away from where we live. And it was an afternoon screening of Frozen 2, and 100 youths, gang members, I don't know what they were, turned up, and there was a machete fight. And the police were called. It was a mass deployment, dogs, tasers, loads of arrests. So yeah, I think
wait for Netflix.
we're going to try and schedule it when there's no machete fight.
Disney Plus in a year and a half.
Yeah, right.
That was not the answer I thought you were going to give.
A machete fight. That's beautiful.
Sean,
How
you're
often
up.
people do expect machete fights is a whole other question.
More so now.
So my first question is: you did some story work on the video game 50 Cent, Blood on the Sand. And once you've climbed that mountain, I mean, is everything else sort of run of the mill and anticlimactic after that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Fitty.
you have done your homework. 50 Cent, Blood in the Sand. Yeah, I got hired by Swordfish Studios to do some story work on that. And I came up with a whole storyline, which was one of 50 Cent's posse gets kidnapped when they go and do it. They basically, video games are a little bit weird because they don't work in the same way as films. You don't start with a blank page. They developed a load of scenarios and assets. And one of the things it had to be was a desert set story. They had a cityscape. They had a facility of some kind. And so I had to come up with a storyline linking all of these things. And I said to myself, 50 Cent, tough guy, let's give him good motivation to go on this rampage in the desert that doesn't involve him, just killing randomly. And so one of his posse gets kidnapped and he has to go and rescue them. And everybody liked it at the studio. And then the games publisher said, who is this guy, meaning me? He doesn't really have any games credits. We want to bring in a big name games writer to actually deliver the script. And so they brought in a big name games writer, and he changed my idea of 50 Cent going to rescue a member of his posse to 50 Cent is getting paid for a gig, and the promoter doesn't have the money to pay him, so he pays him with a crystal skull, and the crystal skull is stolen, and 50 Cent goes on the rampage across the desert to recover the crystal skull. This was around the time that Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull,
The Mummy,
had come out, and I just thought to myself, I don't want to disparage another writer, but the chances are he'd probably just seen the Crystal Skull Indiana Jones movie and thought, that is the best Indiana Jones movie of the trilogy. There were only 3 Indiana Jones films.
So when Frozen 3 involves a machete attack, and Adam Hamdy
I was
wrote
just going to say the same thing.
So
50 Cent 2, Machete at the Frozen.
So that was my, so if anyone's ever played 50 Cent 2 and wondered, why the hell am I doing all this to try and recover a crystal skull? That's why.
Yeah.
Question 2, how often do you and Mr. Cent hang out?
Mr. Who?
Mr. Cent. 50 Cent.
50 Cent.
50.
Well, over here is Mr. 20 pence.
Mr. 20 Cent. Not nearly as tough sounding.
Just sounds like the exchange rate's off a little bit there.
When you come to the States, do you, in your heart of hearts, secretly curse the whining colonists and their inalienable rights and their self-evident truths?
Well, it would be really cool if America was still part of the UK, because it would mean not having to wait for 6 hours to get through Homeland Security. I'm really not a threat to your country. I'm just a writer. And all of those things that the NSA has seen me search for.
Yeah, you can't say writer.
Yeah. Books. I don't really want to know what the missile system is on the roof of the White House.
What?
Yeah. Wow.
There's Secret Service agent just skins.
Black your screen out, Chris.
Okay, let's move on to question 4 before Chris.
Yeah, so do I secretly? Yeah, well, to be honest, the whole thing started off because of tea, and I can understand getting upset because of tea.
Yeah.
And I can understand that. People getting angry and starting a revolution because of tea. It's very, very relatable.
It's very sensitive.
It wasn't Lady Grey.
Lady Grey? What the hell? I'm starting a revolution here.
That's my Lady Grey, man.
All right, so question number 4. You get to pick the next Bond. Who is it?
Ooh.
Whoa. Now I'm thinking age. I'm going to go controversial. I'm going to go Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, wow.
No.
Yes.
Wow.
No.
Yes.
We all love Ryan Reynolds, except for Houts, who has some
I would
hang-up
love
with him.
to see Deadpool Bond.
Yes.
I would love to see
Oh, yeah.
a different take on Bond. And also, I'd love to see an American Bond because we Brits have been over and we've taken your Batman and we've taken your Spider-Man, and we've
very
taken
good point. That's a very good point.
That's
He's
true.
Canadian, though.
Take
remember.
back Bond. Okay.
Take back Bond. Give an American Bond.
Ryan Reynolds
Oh,
is a
man.
treasure.
I tell you,
That's it. I'm out of here.
He's probably aged out of it, but
Problem with Ryan Reynolds, Mike.
What
Okay,
is
and
your problem
I've said this
with Ryan
before in last shows. He's way too good looking. B, he's too good of an entertainer.
Blake Lively, number
He's
two.
he has
APB.
one of the most beautiful women in the world as well. I mean, there's everything to hate about this guy. Everything, because there's no standard that we can live up to match him. And so
which is
therefore I
perfect for
say
Bond.
kick
And
him
he
off
owns
the planet.
All that
Aviation
fits
Gin.
Bond.
Aviation Gin, baby. That's another sponsor.
Toast Ryan Reynolds.
We will toast
I'll
him
toast
again.
that too.
Ryan Reynolds.
For Ryan Reynolds.
I'll do this just because.
Love that guy.
Call us, Ryan. Call us.
If he's probably aged out of it, but I was behind the Idris Elba move for Bond a few years ago.
Yeah, I still think he's a contender. Oh, and there was somebody else. That I
Michael
heard.
B. Jordan could do it.
Oh, there was a rumor that Tom Hardy might be offered it as well.
Yeah, see, I could see
That's
that
pretty
too.
cool,
But
too.
All those
Idris
guys
Elba
would be
would've been
great.
great.
Yeah.
Okay, my last question. Yes, I still have a question left. What is my last question? Okay, what the hell is porridge?
Isn't it like
he doesn't know.
I don't know. No one knows.
It's like watered down oatmeal.
Porridge. There's two meanings for porridge. The first meaning is time served in prison. So if you're going to do your porridge,
Really?
it's time served in prison. So if you get sent down for a crime, you're going to do porridge.
It just doesn't sound right. Go on.
That's absolutely true. And the second meaning of porridge is oatmeal.
It's just oatmeal.
It's just water.
Is there anything in it, like cinnamon or
You might
walnuts,
put some
something?
cinnamon in it. You might put some sugar in it. I'm sure there are some porridge purists that will come on and complain about my definition
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
Essentially, oats and milk.
Pick it in
And
your house.
In Scotland, here, if you go to a good B&B in Scotland, you can get porridge in a drawer.
Nah, that doesn't even make
I-
sense.
That doesn't compute.
No.
So they'll make the oatmeal, they'll make the porridge, and they'll let it sort of solidify into a cake and put it in a drawer and store it at room temperature, so you can kind of slice it up. And we do things like this here.
Is there a top brand of porridge? Like Quaker Oats is our oatmeal. Is there a top brand?
Quaker Oats?
Quaker Oats?
Yeah,
Quaker Oats porridge.
Yeah, Quaker Oats.
Our third sponsor.
We
Sponsor
Toast
number
that
3.
one, too. There's a lot of
Put your
toasting
porridge
today.
in a drawer.
Wow. Hey, Mike.
All right, let's get this show on the road here. All right.
Here we go.
I'm so confused right now, by the way.
Okay, well,
That's every show, by the way.
if that was confusion, then let me throw one out here. The last time you checked the menu for spotted dick.
You know what? I'll see you guys later.
I'll be honest. I have been thinking about spotted dick.
And that's our show today, folks.
There's
Thank
another
you very
promo
much.
right there, starting Adam Hamdy.
No, I have been thinking about it because
Don't even go any further.
No, I gotta hear why.
There's antibiotics for that, right?
school a lot.
What is
I
what?
have it at school a lot.
Yeah.
Spotted dick for
Yeah.
my American compadres is it's a sponge pudding with raisins or currants. At least I hope there were raisins or currants.
Sure it is.
And I used to have spotted dick a lot at school, and you never see it.
Just question 2, please.
You'd have spotted dick at least once a week.
I've had it once. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was in jail.
It was right. It was in college. Yeah.
Got a shot. And it worked out. Okay, what's
Honestly, in all seriousness, you never see it anymore. You never see dick on the menu. You know, and I would
Modern
like
medicine.
I've never seen it.
This whole thing is a comedy bit on the cruise after
whoever?
So that's our first comedy bit right there.
I apologize to our audience for that question. Number 2,
Goodness, thanks, Mike.
why do the English drive on the wrong side of the road?
Yeah.
Oh
That's
no!
the What is wrong with you guys?
Oh no! Oh no! Do you know? I did look this up once, and it is to do with where we used to sit on our horse-drawn carriages. It's something to do with Americans used to sit at the front, and we used to our coachman used to sit at the back. The Americans used to sit at the front. There was something to do with front and back positioning. So it evolved from there. And I don't know how the rest of the world has gotten away with driving on the wrong side of the road. We clearly do drive on the correct side of the road, and you just don't. So,
not the question.
Clearly not.
All right. Who's tougher, U.S. or Royal Marines?
Ooh. I'm going to go Royal Marines.
Okay. You're wrong, but I'll just say okay.
Videos that I've seen.
All right. Question 4. 3 items that the crew must bring when they arrive unannounced at your home.
Don't say spotted dick.
No spotted dick.
Already had that.
I'll assume that you're bringing that with you. You need to bring triple sec, tequila, and lemons. And then I can make us all an awesome margarita.
Oh,
See,
listen,
now we're talking.
I like that.
This is,
All right,
write that down there, Shiny boy. All right. This is the last question, thankfully, for our audience. One of the 4 of us, of the 4 of us, not you, but the 4 of us in the crew, who would be kicked out of England first?
I'm going to go with Eric.
Yeah,
of course it is.
Of course it is. That's the correct answer. Of course it is.
Wrong answer.
He badmouths people. He's always starting fights.
Always.
Carries a machete.
He gets machete at any opportunity.
Him and Corn Pop. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. That is the perfect answer.
Yeah.
Of this group, I am the only one who actually has a direct line, and my maternal grandfather was born in England, so I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, I'd probably get kicked out because my grandma was full Scots.
How would you know? Have you done our genealogy? What the hell do you know about my genealogy?
I did. I was at your house last week, and I got some DNA
my name's
sample.
Cameron. I'm Scottish, Welsh, Polish, something. I don't know.
No, the DNA sample. Let's talk about that after the show's over.
Much interesting.
Wow.
Well, Eric, I think you'd get kicked out of Britain for taking DNA samples from people without their permission.
There you go. Answer.
Don't.
Eric, no comment on that one,
please.
No comment on that.
I don't want to know how you get those DNA samples. Don't.
No.
Let's just.
On that note.
What's question 6, please? No, Adam, you survived the lightning round. I hope you had fun with it. I hope we
didn't doctor soon.
Too much of a fool of ourselves. But
Brilliant.
we sincerely appreciate you having on. We look forward to Aftershock catching on the market here in the United States, and then we want Black 13. So let's get a U.S. publisher to latch onto that, and we'll look forward to maybe we bring you on and talk to you when Private Moscow comes out with James Patterson next year.
Yeah, can't wait.
Awesome.
Well, I tell you what, I'll raise it with Jim. Actually, I think that could be quite fun.
That'd be wonderful.
That would be an awesome experience. So
yeah.
We will tone down the question. We'll make him a little more mature at that.
I don't know. Let's see what we can do about that.
No.
Frog and the scorpion. You can't change your nature.
That's true. So. But Adam, we toast you. We thank you for coming
Raise a
on.
glass.
Thank you very much, guys.
Look forward to much success from you.
J.K. Rowling, British author, in honor of Adam.
Great to see you.
Love it. Thanks.
The crew would like to thank Adam Hamdy for spending time with us today and telling us all about his novel Aftershock, also Black 13 and Private Moscow. To learn more about Adam, please visit his website, www.adamhamdy.com. If you're interested in crime, mysteries, or thrillers, as a writer or just even as a fan, please consider attending Capital Crime in October of 2020. It's held in the heart of London. Thanks again to Adam, and we look forward to seeing you on Monday as the crew gives you another episode of The Crew Reviews.
Mm-hmm.
You're here.
It does.
Well done. Cheers.
Cheers.
Eric.
Cheers, boys.
Oh.
Cheers.
Another good one.
Now I got to do it again.
Do you have an adult beverage with you?
I don't. I can go get one though.
We talked about that. Now, that was the one thing we talked about on Friday. That was the only thing we talked about, damn it.
The important part of the show.
Have a drink.
Now, were you aware of Spotted Dick before you?
Oh yeah.
No, and I wasn't aware he was asking that question because I actually didn't read his.
I didn't know it'd go quite this down the rabbit hole.
That threw me for a loop.
I have been thinking about. It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
I can honestly say I've never ever once in my entire life thought of Spotted Dick. Why is it called that?
I'm sure the inventor was named Richard, right? And he threw in these little, raisins.
Chris, that's your homework for next episode.
I'm going to Google that right now, and then my wife will be like, why are you looking up Spotted Dick?
We have to have a
He's
conversation.
like, should I get a prescription? What happened?
What's going on with you?
In America, you're going to get your whole feed will just be full of medical adverts for curing.
Absolutely.
Learned so much, man.
Learned what Spotted Dick was finally.
This whole conversation now with you, Adam, is all about Spotted Dick. Thank you, Michael.
If you take one thing away from today,
I'm going to see that out. So the challenge is for all of us to work Spotted Dick into our next book.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude.
there you go.
That's something else. I wanted to.
Don't tell me that just reminded you of something.
Really kind of upset this DJ thing didn't come out during the interview. DJ Hamdy.
DJ, it's actually not bad.
That's a good name.
Hamdy. It's an honor for the crew to welcome Adam Hamdy to our show today.
I didn't like it.
Nope.
No?
No, the way you ended it, it was just like you were reading, which you are, but
It looks like everyone's reading now, though.
No, I know, but
No, it doesn't. Have you watched mine?
yeah, it really doesn't.
It doesn't all.
So what don't you like? You don't like the end?
No, the way you're talking now, that's the way you need to read.
Yeah. Pump it up, baby.
So
We don't
it's
like
an
the end.
honor.
Let's-
Dude,
What do I need to
seriously,
change with the end?
It's an
Talk with
honor.
your teeth clenched. Try this.
It is such an honor to welcome.
Hello,
Adam
our guest
Hamdy.
today is author
Russia.
Adam Hamdy. If you're
Who's
not familiar with his name, you soon will be. Adam's co-writer.
Try that in a
Nick
straight voice.
Fennessy.
Let me hear the straight voice.
His upcoming book with James Patterson, besides... blah, blah, blah,
It's all about James.
No,
It's all
it's
about
about
Adam.
James. Gotta throw that Adam and
All
James
about
in there.
Okay.
We're talking about Adam here, buddy.
I don't want to do this 50 times. My kids have been very patient, so
Well, maybe
That's up to you then, pal. Maybe you shouldn't screw up.
if you can shut up, I can actually start talking.
Go.
Wow, a lot of anger.
Mm.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Use
you
it.
have no idea.
Use
Use
the
it.
force.
Use it.
Use
Yeah.
the force. Go. Energy. Get motivated.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Pump it up.
Don't read quick. Have passion in your voice.
Okay, now this last one, release the hounds.
Release the hounds.
Full energy.
And
You
I want
just
to,
drank- you just
like, I
drank
want to
a
slam this
Red Bull.
drink because I'm going to so pumped up what you say.
The crew would like to thank Adam
That's right.
Hamdy
Yeah.
for spending
Go with
time
it.
with us today,
That's it.
telling us
Use
all
that
about his
energy.
novel After.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Snap into a Slim Jim.
Don't forget about Black 13 in Private Moscow. I'm
right.
glad I entertain you guys. It's one
Us
of my
too. That's
highlights.
why
of
I
life.
do this.
Dude.
The only reason I do this
Dude,
is to make
you will
the three of
not
happy.
get any pity from me. I entertained you guys for a full 45 minutes last week or 2 weeks ago.
You're the glue that keeps it going.
Glue, yeah.
Without it, it doesn't exist.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
No one
yeah.
would tune in.